So in today's video, we're gonna talk about things that are bigger than trains. Why? Because they make it like that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim, and I love all things model trains, but I specialize mostly in weathering and graffiti, and today, we're gonna be talking about all the things that are bigger than trains. Okay, not everything, because there's a lot of things that are bigger than trains. You probably stand next to a train, you're like, oh my goodness, trains are big. But guess what? Trains are not that big, because they make it like that. That statement right there, trains are not that big because they make it like that, is literally the inside joke statement that became this YouTube channel. My brother and I used to say that all the time at train shows when we would see little tiny trees and little tiny buildings next to trains because trains are big. But guess what? Trains are not that big because they make it like that. We used to start joking about that probably like 10, 12, maybe even more years ago. And it slowly turned into, hey, I want to make a YouTube channel about my graffiti and weathering and all that kind of stuff. What should I call it? And my brother literally said to me, you know what, it's obvious. You've already named the channel. It's They Make It Like That. And so fast forward now 5 years later approximately, and here we are making YouTube videos once again. And I wanted to talk to you about a few different landmarks in the world and how big they really are. I'm gonna stick to N scale and HO scale. I know there's other scales, but you know what? If you want to know all the other scales, you can do the math. We've got G scale, we got O scale, we got Z scale, or Z scale, depending on where you live. T scale, TT scale, S scale. So many different scales. So quick refresher, HO scale is 1 to 87, which means that 1 foot in the real world is 87 feet in HO scale land. And N scale, which is 1 to 160th scale, close to around half the size of HO, is 1 foot for every 160 feet in N scale land. So when you think about it, the world's a great big ol' ball floating through space, and there's a lot of big things on it. We're gonna take a little trip around the world in no particular order, but I am gonna start with the Canadian National Tower, or as you might know it, the CN Tower in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, coming in at a whopping 1,815 feet. I know, I'm Canadian, and I'm gonna do this whole video in feet because I don't really use the metric system even though I'm from Canada, because I'm a fabricator and I use a tape measure and I know what a 4x8 sheet of plywood looks like, and I don't know what a 1176 by 2352 millimeter sheet of plywood. I'll never remember that. It's a 4x8 sheet of plywood. So back on track, the CN Tower coming in at a whopping 1,815 feet, formerly the world's tallest freestanding structure. If you were to model that in HO scale, how big do you think it would actually have to be? Put your comments down below. How big do you think the HO scale CN Tower would be? Guess what? It would be about 20.8 feet. So if you think, oh my goodness, it would be touching the ceiling in my train room. No, it would be taller than your house typically. And in N scale, it comes in at a much more manageable but still a little bit too big 11.3 feet. So if you're thinking maybe I'll put an N scale CN Tower on your layout, you would probably be wrong as well. Especially when you think about the bench work, and then you think you've got to put it bench work height above the floor and then 11.3 feet up. Nobody has ceilings that high, and if you do, kudos. Now let's take a trip around the world to Paris, France, and let's talk about the Eiffel Tower coming in at 1,083 feet. Fun fact, I used to work for a company where we built a replica of the Eiffel Tower out of plywood, and it stood at 16 feet tall, which would be taller than the HO scale model, but not by much. It's actually a 12.4 foot tall structure if you model that in HO scale. And in N scale, it comes in at 6.8 feet. So much like when Paris gifted Lady Liberty to the United States, we're gonna hop on over on a steam barge back to New York City and pay a visit to the old copper giant. Coming in at a quaint 305 feet tall from the ground to the tip of the torch. Actually, you know what? In HO scale, that is a much more doable 3.5 feet tall. And in N scale, 1.9 feet tall. You could put that on your layout, but it's probably still a little bit bigger than you expected. All right, well, we are in New York City. Let's just hop in one of those big old yellow taxis and head on over to the Empire State Building, coming in at 1,454 feet. If you want that on your layout in HO scale, that's gonna be 16.7 feet tall. And if you're in N scale, that's 9.1 feet tall. It's pretty big. You're probably not gonna put the Empire State Building on your layout, and if you do, sometimes when you do stuff like that, you can exercise a little bit of either forced perspective or selective scaling. It's big, man. The world is big. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Because they make it like that. Speaking of, a fun fact, I am not ever going to do a video about scale distance on a layout. And I recommend that you don't figure that out for yourself because it's very disappointing. Alright, so like I told you, this is not a very efficient way to travel around the world. We went from Paris back to New York City, and now we are gonna head on over across the pond to London, England. Big Ben coming in at 316 feet. Once again, is a little bit more manageable on your HO scale layout, coming in at 3.6 feet tall, or your N scale layout at 2 feet tall. If you remember, back in the olden days, I did Oceanwide Plaza, and I made it approximately 2 feet tall as well. It's an appropriate size for a condo building. It is big. It's bigger than I expected it to be on my layout, but it's definitely doable. But like I said before, when you compare that to something like the CN Tower, it's astronomical, the comparison in size, because they make big buildings. Everything in the world is bigger than a train, except for things that are smaller than a train. So you're probably thinking, these are some pretty big buildings. I'm not gonna model big buildings on my layout because I'm not modeling London or Paris or New York or Toronto or any of those things. But I just want to have some nice big old mountains on my layout because mountains are picturesque and beautiful, and every train layout needs a nice tunnel going through a mountain. We are already in England, so we're on our way, I guess, to the Himalayas. Let's head on over to Mount Everest and let's get a good real picture of Mount Everest, coming in at 29,032 feet tall. Whoa! In HO scale, are you ready? How big is your train room? Because you're gonna have to cram 333 feet worth of height into your train room to fit Mount Everest. So if I were you, I would downscale to N scale, because then you really only have to try and get 181.5 feet into your train room. Things are big. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Trees are taller than trains. Buildings are taller than trains. Life is taller than trains, but you know what? In my heart, trains are the biggest because it's the best hobby in the world. And even bigger than that are the friends you make along the way. Do 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 do. I'm proud of you, son. Alright, so that's it for this video. If you like it and you want to see more about different scales, I would suggest you check out this video. And until next time, remember, they make it like that.